Bathroom Breaks and Bedtime Tales presents Backstage by Sevastian Winters. Every year, just when the weather turned warm enough for the stones to stop hurting bare feet, the shows came to town. They always arrived together. Two small stages were rolled into the square before breakfast, one painted red, the other painted blue. They were placed just far enough apart that no one could mistake which was which, but close enough that the shouting could bounce back and forth all day long. By the time the bells rang for noon, the puppets were ready. They weren't dangling puppets with strings. They were the kind you slid your hand into, soft cloth bodies, carved wooden heads, mouths that opened and closed when you squeezed just right. Each had a permanent expression stitched into its face: outrage, concern, righteousness, alarm. Children gathered first. They always did. The puppets were loud and colorful, and the voices were funny in an exaggerated way that made everything sound urgent and important at the same time. Parents came next, then neighbors, then people who said they hated the shows but somehow never missed them. The Red Show began. A red puppet popped up from behind the stage and immediately started shouting about how terrible the blue puppets were, about how everything was being ruined, about how only the red puppets could stop it. Whenever the puppet paused for breath, a box was passed through the crowd. Coins clinked. Then the blue show answered. A blue puppet sprang into view and shouted about how dangerous the red puppets were, about how everything good was under attack, about how only the blue puppets could protect it. Another box moved through the crowd. More coins. The children were taught early which show they belonged to. Some learned it from their parents, some from their friends. Some just picked the color they liked better and never changed their minds. A boy named Elias sat cross-legged near the front. He liked the shows, but not for the reasons most people did. He liked watching how the puppets moved, how they leaned forward when they were angry, how they nodded when they promised things, how their mouths kept talking even when the words sounded the same as yesterday's words. The shows went on for hours. Red shouted, blue shouted, the crowd shouted back. Every now and then, a puppet would wag its finger and say the other side was stealing from them, or lying to them, or laughing at them behind their backs. That usually earned a fresh round of coins. By sunset, the crowd was tired and hoarse, but satisfied. It felt good to have yelled. It felt good to know who to blame. People drifted home, already arguing about what they had heard. Elias stayed. He didn't know why. He just knew that the quiet after the shouting felt different. Too big, like something unfinished. When the square was empty, a small door behind the stages opened. Elias had never noticed it before, though it was directly between the red stage and the blue one. Plain wood, no paint, no signs. A man stepped out. He was older than Elias had expected. Not ancient, but comfortable in his age, well-fed, well-dressed, calm. He carried something under each arm, a red puppet, a blue puppet. Elias held his breath. The man slipped one hand into the red puppet and lifted it to eye level. "Can you believe them?" the red puppet said, its voice suddenly softer, amused. "They're furious." The man chuckled and switched hands. Now the blue puppet spoke. "They always are," it said. "It works every time." The man didn't change his expression as he spoke through each puppet in turn. His hand slid out of one and into the other with the ease of long practice. Red complained. Blue agreed. Red joked. Blue laughed. They weren't arguing. They were reminiscing. The man walked back inside, and Elias crept closer to the door. Inside was a long room with a heavy table. Plates were stacked high. Glasses were full. Other people sat around the table, coats tossed over chairs without regard for color. They greeted the man warmly. "How were the crowds?" someone asked. "Angrier than last week," the man said, slipping the red puppet onto the table beside the blue one. "They gave generously." Someone raised a glass. "To passion," they said. They ate together. They laughed together. They spoke about the town as if it were a game board. One of them picked up the red puppet and made it shout. Another grabbed the blue puppet and made it shout back. The room filled with mock outrage, followed by laughter. Elias didn't hear every word. He didn't need to. He saw the puppets lying side by side when the hands were gone. He saw how easily they were swapped. He saw how little the colors mattered once the door was closed. When the door shut again, Elias returned to the square. The stages looked harmless in the moonlight, empty, quiet. The next morning, the shows returned. The puppets popped up right on time. The shouting began. The boxes came out. Elias sat farther back now. When the crowd booed, he stayed quiet. When they cheered, he watched the hands inside the puppets' mouths, opening and closing, opening and closing. He didn't tell anyone what he'd seen. Some things, he understood now, didn't change when you shouted at them. Some things only worked because everyone was looking at the show instead of the hands. So Elias watched, and he never looked at the puppets the same way again.